Chorda equina. After the spinal cord terminates at L3, pia mater extends through the dura to attach to the first coccygeal vertebra. This is called phylum terminale. Extension of pia mater to C1. And the coccygeal ligament is the lower part of the pia mater, which extends to C1 and is not covered with dura. Which is why when you do a lumbar puncture, it is attempted at L4, L5 to avoid damage to the spinal cord, because it is going to terminate higher up, either between L2 and L3 or L1 and L2. So the lumbar puncture area is specified to be between L4 and L5. At least you have to go further down so that you do not damage the spinal cord. This is the same picture. A is at birth, at 3 months. B is end of 5th month, and newborn is what you see in diagram C. Now, you've done in your general embryology, you've done a group of anomalies which are known as NTDs. They are called neural tube defects. Now we just talked about the neural tube. The neural tube is coming from neuroectoderm, which is a sheet of a layer or a sheet which separates from the ectoderm, and then it folds and forms the neural tube. Now, whenever there is incomplete closure or abnormal closure of neural tube, you have a very vast range of anomalies which are given the heading of neural tube defects. Now you have a condition known as spina bifida. Spina bifida is actually considered to be an anomaly of the development of the vertebra as well as anomaly of neural tube. That is because spina bifida most commonly occurs in the lumbosacral region of the developing embryo and fetus. And this is due to non-closure of the vertebral arches, so that a part of the neural tube or spinal cord is exposed. There are two types of spina bifida. The less harmful type, which is compatible with life without having to do anything about it, is spina bifida occulta. This is recognized because where you have that gap and you have non-closure of the vertebral arches in this lumbosacral region, that area is covered by a tuft of hair. The other type is spina bifida cystica, which is a more serious condition because here that the neural tube or the spinal cord is exposed. I'm going to show you a diagram. Now, I told you that this is under neural tube defects, but this is also due to anomaly of the vertebra or the skeletal system. Now, the gray area that you see in diagram A is the developing vertebra. Because posteriorly, the two vertebral arches did not meet to form the spine of the vertebra, there is a gap. That gap is covered by skin, and over the skin you have hair. So you have protected the spinal cord and the meninges by covering it with skin and hair. This is spina bifida occulta. Similarly, if you have no covering and you have no hair over the gap, that will be spina bifida cystica, and you can have different degrees of protrusion of nervous tissue. One is where you have a meningocele. Meningocele means that there is protrusion of the meninges through that gap. Meningomyelocele means that through this gap where the vertebral arches have not joined, you have protrusion of meninges and neural tissue or gray matter. So just to recap this, we are talking about development of the spinal cord, which originally started as neural tube. Now, this spinal cord, when this neural tube doesn't close, you have a certain group of anomalies which are known as neural tube defects, in which you have one which is spina bifida occulta. This is not serious. The gap is covered by skin and hair. Spina bifida cystica can have different degrees of protrusion of the dura, of the meninges and nervous tissue. You have meningocele, which is protrusion of meninges. You have myelomeningocele, which is protrusion of meninges and neural tissue. And then you have a condition where the neural tube doesn't form. I told you that the edges will elevate and they'll be called neural crest. And finally, they'll close. So that condition where you have failure of formation of neural tube is known as rachyschism. Failure of neural folds to elevate and close. That is rachyschism. So we have spina bifida occulta, which you see in diagram A. Then we have types of spina bifida cystica. B is meningocele, where you have a protrusion of the meninges. And C is meningomyelocele, where you have protrusion of the meninges along with nervous tissue or gray matter. And then finally, in D and E, because there is failure of closure or formation of the neural tube, this condition is known as rachyschism. D and E both show the same anomaly. In one, there is a slight dipping, but there is no elevation of the edges in D. And in E, there is folding of neural tissue, but still no formation of neural tube. Both conditions are called rachyschism. So now we have these anomalies which are under the heading of neural tube defects. And like I told you, they will be, the spina bifida anomalies are considered to be a part of development of nervous system and also considered when you talk about development of the vertebral column. Now, what can be the causes of neural tube defects? And what is the possible prevention? There are many causes, but generally it has been seen that these days vitamin A is recommended for improvement of skin quality by dermatologists. And a lot of young girls, they use topical creams which have vitamin A. And then those who are very aggressive in their treatment, they also take vitamin A orally. And hypervitaminosis A has been seen to cause neural tube defects. Valproic acid and hyperthermia are also reasons for embryos having neural tube defects. Now, folic acid is a very readily available and very affordable supplement. And if a woman of childbearing age is married and she's planning to have a baby, or the husband and wife are planning for a pregnancy, the woman should be advised to take folic acid a month before contraception. As soon as she starts thinking about having a baby, she should take folic acid 400 micrograms per day. And if she has a history of delivering a baby with neural tube defects, in the subsequent pregnancies and follow up to the pregnancy, this dose can be taken up to 4,000 micrograms per day. So a very good way to prevent neural tube defects is to advise the uh, young woman who's planning to have a baby to start taking folic acid supplement. And folic acid has also been seen to prevent a condition that we all now recognize. You know that autism is a disorder of psychosocial disorder, and nobody has been able to identify exactly what causes autism. But folic acid deficiency has also been seen to cause what is called as autism spectrum disorder, which involves a lot of social and behavioral and intellectual challenges seen in children and young adults. So, folic acid is a very important supplement, especially for women of childbearing age. This is again a picture of Spina bifida, and because there is no hair over it, there is no covering of skin. This looks like Spina bifida cystica, or maybe it is a meningocele, but this is in the lumbosacral region where most of these anomalies exist in children or newborn. Now we have to talk about the different parts of the hindbrain, because now we're moving up. We have established the formation of the spinal cord, and now we have to move up towards the parts of the brain. So the continuation of the spinal cord is into the hindbrain. The hindbrain is known as the rhombencephalon, and the rhombencephalon, we discussed this yesterday, that it is further divided into two parts. The rhombencephalon, or the hindbrain, is divided into a myelencephalon, which is medulla oblongata, and a metencephalon, which is pons and cerebellum. Now, I wanted to explain to you with the help of a diagram that I've drawn. I hope you can all see this. The structure in the blue is actually the embryo, very basic picture. The rounded expanded end is the cranial end of the embryo, and the narrow end is the caudal end. And what you see protruding out is actually the yolk sac and the area of the future umbilicus. Now, in the red lines, I have made the neural tube, and it is expanded cranially because it is going to form the different parts of the brain, which we talked about. We said they were brain vesicles in the fourth and fifth week. And this neural tube will narrow down after formation of the brain, and it will become the spinal cord. Now, in the next diagram, I have drawn the spinal cord like we see it. It's a very simple diagram. Maybe I've missed out on some of the anatomical details, but right now I wanted to show you that yesterday we talked about alar and basal plates. And we identified two areas of consolidation where the alar plates will form on either side the sensory horn, or the posterior horn of the spinal cord, and the basal plates will form the anterior motor horn of the spinal cord. So what you have done here is that the neural tube, which was originally extending throughout the baby, when this neural tube develops a thick wall and becomes the spinal cord, the red circle that you see is the original neural tube. And the H-shaped structure that you see is the mantle layer, which consists of nerve cell bodies. This mantle layer is further divided into alar plates on either side and basal plates on either side. The alar plates are for the dorsal sensory horn of the spinal cord. The basal plates are for the ventral motor horn of the spinal cord. And the central canal of the spinal cord is actually the original neural tube. So you can see that the neural tube has narrowed down and become the central canal, which is filled with CSF. And now what I want you to understand is that the area outside the H-shaped mantle layer is the marginal layer, which we know as white matter. Now we're talking about rhombencephalon. I want you to understand that the diagram of the spinal cord that you see, the alar plates are present dorsally and the basal plates are ventrally when you talk of them in relation to the central canal. As you go up towards the formation of hindbrain, I want you to understand that these alar plates will actually move. If I could show you with an arrow, these alar plates are actually going to move down and they'll break up into three groups of neurons. The basal plates are also going to break up into three groups of neurons on each side. And the original central canal of the spinal cord is actually going to widen so that the basal plates are moved down and to the sides, the alar plates are moved down and to the sides of the basal plates. And the central canal will expand posteriorly and it will create the cavity of the hindbrain, which is the fourth ventricle. So the central canal, you know that all these ventricles, they communicate with one another. So as you go up towards the hindbrain, you go to the myelencephalon, which is medulla oblongata. When you are going to form the medulla oblongata, you are going to rearrange the alar and basal plates, and you are going to widen the central canal because the central canal will actually continue into the fourth ventricle. Now, the last diagram on this slide, somebody has added another labeling. Very good. So I hope you understand how the central canal expands, and by its expansion, it's moving up. It rearranges the alar and basal plates, and it expands to form the rhomboid shape fourth ventricle, which is the cavity of the hindbrain or the rhombencephalon. And why have I drawn it in red? Because this is the original neural tube. The original neural tube became the central canal in the spinal cord. And then now when we come to the hindbrain, that neural tube will reshape itself and become the cavity of the fourth ventricle. Now, I'm sure you're all very familiar with these terms, but we'll just generally go over them. The arrangement of these plates is now actually in 6 parts because each plate will break up into 3 groups of neurons. So the alar plate, because it is concerned with sensory component and sensory input, we will have from without inwards, from external to internal. If you look at the 3 groups of the alar plate on each side, I've just labeled one side. We are now talking about the hindbrain and we are talking about the medulla oblongata. The alar plates will break up into a somatic afferent group, which is going to bring in sensation from the body. Special visceral afferent, which is going to bring in information from structures related with the pharyngeal arches or the pharyngeal apparatus. And general visceral afferent, which will bring in information from the involuntary musculature. concerned with autonomic control. So now in the alar plate, we have three groups. We have a somatic afferent, special visceral afferent, and general visceral afferent. Similarly, the basal plate, which was forming the anterior horn of the spinal cord, the basal plate is going to again break up into three groups of neurons. If you follow the labeling, you will see that from within outwards, you can see somatic efferent, which means motor neurons going to motor fibers going to different parts of the body. Special visceral efferent, which means motor neurons controlling different structures coming from pharyngeal arches. General visceral efferent, which will be control of involuntary muscles in the GIT or the heart or respiratory system. So I want you to just pay a little attention to this slide, because I've tried to simplify what can be a little difficult to understand. Alar basal plates, they consolidate into the posterior and anterior horns of spinal cord. Neural tube becomes central canal of spinal cord. As you move up towards the hindbrain, the alar plates will move downwards, and the basal plates and alar plates together will form three groups each of different neurons. And the central canal will expand and continue into the cavity of the fourth ventricle. I hope you've understood this, because now we're going to move on. This is just what I told you in the diagram earlier. Myelencephalon is medulla oblongata. Metencephalon is pons and cerebellum. The neural tube, which became the central canal in the spinal cord, becomes the cavity of the fourth ventricle in the rhombencephalon. The alar plates on each side are arranged as somatic afferent, special visceral afferent, general visceral afferent. The basal plates likewise differentiate into three groups. Because it is motor, it will be efferent, somatic efferent, special visceral efferent, and general visceral efferent. Now, I want to take a minute here and talk to you about cranial nerves. In gross anatomy, you are doing head and neck. I know that you've covered all the cranial nerves. And you know that the cranial nerves are motor and sensory and mixed, and they have their nuclei in, most of them have their nuclei in the brain stem, except for a few, one in the midbrain and so on. But these cranial nerves, we now have to incorporate into different levels of hindbrain, because you know that some cranial nerves have their nuclei in the medulla, some have their nuclei in the pons, some have their nuclei in the midbrain. So we have to talk about these groups in relation to the cranial nerves that they are going to give rise to. Now, what I've done here, I've again tried to simplify the diagrams of the books. We know that you have three sets on each side. I've just drawn one set. And in this picture, I'm talking about basal plate. The basal plate, we know that it divided into three different groups when we came up into the hindbrain or rhombencephalon. So on the left, I have drawn the developing myelencephalon or the medulla oblongata. This myelencephalon will have in the somatic efferent group it will have the neurons of the 12th or the hypoglossal nerve, which is motor to the tongue. In the special visceral efferent, it's going to be the 11, 10, and 9 nerve, which means vagus, glossopharyngeal, and 11, I think, is accessory. And these will supply the structures of the pharyngeal arches. And finally, the general visceral efferent will be going to the involuntary muscles of the respiratory system, the heart, and the GI. So again, please, I'm going to repeat this for your understanding, that these three rounded ballpoint structures that you see are the three groups of the basal plate. In the medulla or the myelencephalon, the somatic efferent is going to give rise to the neurons of the 12th nerve. Special visceral efferents will go to different structures coming from pharyngeal arches, basically through 11, 10, and 9. Accessory, vagus, glossopharyngeal. And general visceral efferent group is for involuntary muscles, which are present in the respiratory system, in the GIT, in the heart. As we come to the pons, because the metencephalon consists of pons and cerebellum, but cerebellum develops differently, so we are not going to talk about cerebellum. For now, metencephalon means pons. You again have the same three groups. And these three groups, somatic efferents will give off abducent nerve, special visceral efferent 5 and 7 nerve, which means trigeminal and facial, and general visceral efferent will go to give involuntary muscles or give supply to the sublingual and submandibular glands, the salivary. So I'm talking to you about development of the hindbrain or the rhombencephalon. And we said that the hindbrain is going to form. I need you to be quiet. I need you to be quiet. I can't go on if you keep talking like this. So we're talking about alar plates and basal plates, which have three groups of neurons each when we get to the rhombencephalon. And at the level of the myelencephalon or the medulla, in this diagram, I've shown you what each group represents of the basal plate. And the metencephalon is what the three groups of the basal plate represent in pons. Now, similarly, you can see this diagram, which I've taken from the book. If you look at diagram B, you can see that the alar plates, below them, there is an arrow. There's an arrow because, like I said, they've actually moved down. They were originally the posterior horn of the spinal cord, but now the alar plates have moved down and they have come to lie near the red basal plates. And the central canal has expanded into the cavity of the fourth ventricle. And what we talked about in the earlier diagram that I drew by hand, in the myelencephalon, somatic efferent is for hypoglossal, special visceral efferent for 9, 10, 11, and general visceral efferent for involuntary muscles present in respiratory system or GIT and so on. So this is talking about myelencephalon or medulla. Now this diagram on the left, I'm not going to talk about it right now because I think that we need to understand how these alar and basal plates are arranged. But for those of you who are following my lecture and understanding it, if we look at the diagram on the left, we are now talking about diagram A. What they've done basically here is that they have exposed or taken off the roof of the fourth ventricle. And the margins, the red margin, the blue margins that you see are probably, you can think about them as margins of the fourth ventricle, roughly speaking. And what you see down in the center, you have a sulcus. On either side, you have basal plates, and then you have a sulcus, and then you have alar plate on either side. So they're showing you the floor of the fourth ventricle. You will do I don't know if you've done this, you probably haven't done this in head and neck, but the floor of the fourth ventricle is very important, and a lot of cranial nerve nuclei are discussed in relation to fourth ventricle. If you can somehow relate diagram A, basal alar plates, to diagram B, can you see that there is a sulcus in the middle, and then you have a basal plate on each side. Then there is a sulcus in the middle, and you have alar plates on each side. Similarly, in diagram A, you have a sulcus in the middle. This is the median sulcus. On either side of the median sulcus are the basal plates. Then you have a sulcus limitans, which you can also see in diagram B. And lateral to the sulcus limitans are the alar plates. For now, I think this is enough for you to understand. We will go into detail when we require it. Now we talk about metencephalon. I've already told you that metencephalon, I showed you this diagram, if I'm not wrong. Metencephalon, basal plate. Somatic efferent, sixth nerve. Special visceral efferent, trigeminal and facial. General visceral efferent to sublingual and submandibular glands. I want you to see the same thing in this diagram. You can see we're now talking about the metencephalon, which means pons. And we are again talking about the floor of the fourth ventricle. Somatic efferent, sixth nerve. Special visceral efferent, fifth and seventh. General visceral efferent to the sublingual and submandibular salivary glands. Now we come to alar plates. I think that our 40 minutes are up. Or maybe we have 2 or 3 more minutes.
40 minutes हो गए
40 minutes हो गए हैं
जी
मैम ये काफी है
ये आगे बस 5 मिनट और हैं अगर समझना है तो
थक गए
वो तो आप हमेशा से ही थके हैं वो तो कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है अच्छा जो अभी किया है इसमें से किसी का कोई सवाल अगर है तो मुझे पूछ लें
मैम मैम वो स्पाइना बिफिडा ओकल्टा में वो हेयर ग्रोथ क्यों होती है
वो जो है उसकी कोई वजह नहीं अभी तक मैंने कम से कम नहीं पढ़ी वो यही कहते हैं कि वहां पर ना एक मे बी इट्स अ कॉम्पनसेटरी मैकेनिज्म क्योंकि वहां एक पोटेंशियल वो बोनी वो है मेलफॉर्मेशन और वो एक सॉफ्ट सा एरिया है जहाँ स्पाइनल कॉर्ड का डैमेज होना जो है वो ज्यादा आसान है तो शायद ये फिर अल्लाह की तरफ से कुदरत की तरफ से है कि जी वहां पर स्किन की कवरिंग के ऊपर बाल है लेकिन इसकी कोई वजह मैंने तो नहीं अभी तक पढ़ी आप अगर पढ़ें तो शायद पता चले मैं भी कोशिश करूंगी देखूं और एनी अदर क्वेश्चंस जी do you want to ask anything else?
Thank you, ma'am.
Acha, I need to know how many people are listening to this lecture because that will be your attendance. Okay, so you have, I have 82.
82.
Okay, and how will I know which 82 they are? Because I need to keep a record of the attendance as well.
मैम रोल नंबर लिखे हुए हैं साथ.
तो इसकी मैं क्या स्क्रीनशॉट ले लूं?
जी मैम स्क्रीनशॉट ले लीजिए 82
अच्छा
82 स्टूडेंट.
तो इसकी स्क्रीनशॉट मैं किस तरह लूंगी? 82 है ना पार्टिसिपेंट्स. ये स्क्रीनशॉट कैसे है? Okay, thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and I'll let you know about the next lecture. It's probably going to be early next week, Monday or Tuesday. I'll let you know beforehand. Khuda Hafiz.
Okay,
Allah
ma'am.
Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
मुझे रिकॉर्ड